Right, so we've finished our look development and the client's taken a look at what we've produced and they've unsurprisingly chosen this look here. So this is now the reference we're going to have to work towards for the rest of this sequence. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to grade it all up, going to match it all together, then when we get to the indoor section, we're going to match it together with this warm look. So we'll get started. So the first thing we'll do, we'll make a new stills album. We'll call this one First Pass. And then we'll get started. So we'll start on a decent match for what we've got. We'll take a look at this shot first. So this is our first node. We'll do our basic primaries. We'll set our shadows. Set our highlights and our mids. We want it to be quite bright, quite energetic looking. Now let's just take a look at what we've got. Okay, that's cool. We don't want anything to really hit the ceiling right now. A lot of these highlights here, that's the shirt, is this high reading, but a lot of the highlights here are on the skin, and we don't want our red channels to clip too badly, or at all if we can help it. So then we'll bring up our saturation. And our colour balance is more or less ideal. It looks like we have a green push in our shadows, but in reality that's just the foliage up there, and that's probably okay. We can bring our shadows down a little bit to get our core blacks a bit more. Might just bring down our mids and stretch our mid-tones up very slightly. Now there's only one real issue here, and that's the little red roses on this woman's top here. The red channel here is clipping. So what we want to do is just make sure that we keep those under control throughout the grade. So what we can now do is we'll take a look at our skin tone. Building up a key for the skin should be fairly easy on this shot. We'll just shift the symmetry over. In this case we have some very red tree leaves over here that we want to get rid of, and we have predominantly more yellow orange skin tones here, so the symmetry setting on the HSL key here is actually very useful because this can then push our softness towards the yellow part of our selection, our qualification, and not the red. See how I push it across there? We lose some of the interfering red. So what we will do is just keep a little bit of softness that way. Bring our high up, might just shift our center over, okay. And then what we'll do, we'll decrease our softness on the low range and we'll just bring it up. And then we'll do the same with our shadows. Clean white, clean black, and we'll blur it out. And that's pretty good. Just want to be careful for the house in the background going a bit crazy, but we'll just see where this takes us. First, we might not need to do anything to address that, and what we will do is we'll push a little bit of orange into our skin tones, get everything looking quite nice and suntanned. That's probably a bit too much. That's probably enough, so now we can see before and after. It's not an enormous difference, but it's quite important. We're going to play off the contrast between the blue and the orange in the skin tones in this shot. So now we'll hit our next node, and we'll go ahead and we'll fix the blue jackets. So let's go and take a look. Now we're also getting the sky. I quite like the idea of having quite an intense blue sky. So we'll just bring up our lower sat, get rid of any interference, soften it a little bit. There we go. Clean black and clean white should do us here, and then we will blur that out. And now we'll push some more blue into there, and there we go. We've got quite a nice strong blue colour here. You can see how we're keeping in with the very colourful theme. We've got nice colourful skin tones. We're going to zhuzh up this green in a second, and we'll keep the reds here under control. Have no yellows to work with here, but that's fine. So our next step then would be take care of the red roses. Actually, you know what? No, we'll leave the red roses until the end. Our next step is going to be dealing with the foliage, and we'll key this in completely manually. So we know we want to deal with green, and we know that a good part of green is actually in the yellow end of the spectrum, so we'll shift it over here, and then it's just a matter of judiciously raising the floor and our saturation. Got a little bit of sandstony colour down there, so let's just, until we clean that out, there we go. There we go, we'll clean our white, and what we'll do is we'll clean black, get rid of some noise, and we'll give it a healthy amount of blur as well. So now, you guessed it, add more green to the green. I'm going to push it a little bit more towards blue, and make it a very green green as opposed to a yellowy green. So it's a bit yellowy, a little bit kind of burnt looking there, and now we have a nice vibrant kind of vital green colour there. What we will do is we'll just watch this through. Okay, I don't see any immediate key chatter. There's a little bit of noise in some of the shadows back here, but we'll deal with that in our final pass, in our noise reduction and vignetting pass. That'll be fine. So now what we will do is we'll move on, and we're going to get those red roses under control. These should be fairly easy to key out. There we go. Now they're a little bit orangey looking. I think they'd be better if they were more of a red pink, like a real rose. So what we'll do is we'll flip the hue, and we'll just bring them back under control until we stop getting red clip. We're looking for this here. See, as we push it up and we push it down, that just about brings it back under control. And we'll just make it a nice primary red there, so we've now got those back under control and made them a more pleasing colour. Okay, so that's all the basic stuff for this shot. What we can also do, if we really wanted to, we could make another secondary dedicated to this headband or for these red leaves. I don't want to bring the red leaves out too much. Our focus is in the foreground. We could bring out the headband, we could make a secondary around magenta, but I think we've got enough going on here, so we don't need to go in and really push for that level of detail. I'm just going to check my... Yeah, I wondered if that was the case. I want to be careful not to make all the lips pink here. Let's just see how everything moves. That's fine. Her lips are very good. These lips are a little bit on the pink side, and those are a little bit magenta, but you can barely see them, so that's probably okay. What we will now do is we'll finish this shot off. In fact, you know what? No. We'll come back to the second pass and we'll do vignetting there and then. I'm going to say to a first pass standard, this shot is now done, so I will green flag that, and we know it's done. So, we then move on to the next shot, and we didn't go for this look in the end, so we can get rid of that, and then we can start building it up and matching it to our reference shot. And this is what we're going to be doing throughout. I will record the entire process, don't you worry. But to a large extent, we've seen the basics of what we're doing here. There might be, on this case, I think, I can see I might just have a little bit of a yellow-orange tint in the shadows. There we go. And then we'll turn up our saturation. Might just bring that up. I'm going to bring that cap back under control soon enough. Don't worry about that. Bring up our mids a bit more so we have the... Okay, good. That's looking good to me. Maybe just a little bit more contrast in the shadows. Cool. Okay, that's looking like a good basic match. So these skin tones are actually looking pretty good. We've got a great big yellow reflector in the center of this shot, which is this raincoat here, and it's making, on the left, this guy's shadows look a little bit odd, and on the right we can see some yellow highlights. This guy has some very defined musculature, which picks up highlights in a quite detailed fashion. But we can see just here, maybe on the side of the face, there's bits of yellow reflection, and just on the inside of the hand there, bits of yellow reflection coming in from the jacket. We're going to have to do a fair amount of work to the jacket to make it quite a nice vibrant yellow without it going crazy, and we're going to have to bring our baseball cap back under control here. So we will get started on that, and the first thing we are going to do is take care of our jacket. Now, because it's so distinct, it should be really super hyper easy to key out. We'll shift the symmetry towards yellow, because obviously we're working with yellow here, so that's fine. And then we will blur that out. So we have a pretty good stable key here. Now, it's a very bright object, and as objects get brighter, the more saturated they get, well, let's go about that a different way. Brighter objects violate broadcast legality more quickly, because the brighter something is, the higher your channels climb on your scope on the right here. If anything hits the top, it's clipping. And if you saturate, you increase the output of your color channels. So if a very bright object gets very saturated, it clips, and it can clip to such an extent that it can start to warp and produce some really odd effects. So the trick here is going to be to increase the saturation but bring its brightness down ever so slightly, and you get a very intense, very bright looking colour. It can throw you at first because you think, oh, it's a nice bright object, but in fact the brighter things get, the paler they kind of have to be in order to fit into our legal range. So now that we've got that, we're going to bring things down in there a bit, and then we're going to increase our saturation, and it's a balancing act. What we want to do is avoid any of our channels down here clipping, and what we'll do on this case, but we'll also keep an eye on the vector scope. We don't want anything to go way out and like flatten on the edge of the vector scope, which would be way too much. But that's looking quite nice and strong. That's not violating any of our legality guidelines, and we've not got any clipped channels here either, so that's pretty good. We might just bring our brightness up a smidge. Notice as I do that, the red channel's about to clip. So I just need to bring that down, and maybe I'll tone it down slightly. And now we've gone from there, and that was quite pale and washed out, to here, which is quite nice and vivid. Might just add a little bit more in there. Okay, our next node, we're now going to take care of the hat. So what we will do is we'll pull a key on the hat, and because, again, it's such a vivid artificial colour, that's going to be dead easy. This project is an excellent way to really get the hang of the HSL key, because the look I performed on this final project was just entirely about pulling clean keys on particular colours. We're fortunate insofar as that from the production design onwards there was a very strong emphasis on very clean colours and very vivid artificial colours, so that really helped us out here. So we're working with our footage here, we're taking what's strong about our footage, which is having lots of clean, sharp colours, and then making them stronger. We're not trying to impose something on it artificially, which arguably is what we were doing with our cyan pink look, because it just, the whole thing was brighter and more colourful than that to begin with. So what we want to do here is bring the brightness of our cap down, and probably just bring its saturation down a smidge. It still fits in, but now we're getting rid of that awkward clipping highlight, and we can just bring it right up to the limit there. And now it's a small difference, but an important one. We don't want things clipping out like that. We don't want to lose information. We still have texture in the highlights up here, whereas if we bring it right out and wang it right up, we start to lose detail because we hit the limit of what we can do. Okay. Cool, there we go. This is a fairly simple one. We've only really got two significant features here, so what we'll just do is we'll key in our green manually again. And we've got a bit too much blue in there, so we'll bring that down. We'll just denoise the black and clean out the white and blur it. Now there's potential for noise back here, we want to be careful. But we're just going to make a slight push to the greens. Here, especially up in the top right here. And on this shot we have an excellent match there. I'm not going to fart around with the basketball hoop, because I don't think we need to. So that's fine. So on this shot we're lacking contrast on our main lead's face here. He's also a little bit soft, he's a bit out of focus, and we have a much stronger focus on our kind of supporting character on the right and on the left. So what we're going to do in our second pass when we come back to vignetting, we're going to give him a sharpen and contrast vignette on the face. But for first pass, this is now good to a first pass standard. I'm going to give that a green flag and we'll move on. And I'm going to stop giving things green flags manually pretty soon because it gets quite tedious, but we're just going to move on and continue. And now we're going to keep doing the exact same thing. We're getting some kind of awkward shadows in the hair here, so if we set it so that we only have a little bit touching the bottom, it's quite dull. In this case, it's okay for us to crush down and get some decent detail in the shadows. That's absolutely fine. We just want to make sure that everything is still okay. Now this is quite a basic shot, it's just a close-up. We've got the skin, that blue is already quite strong and matches well in here, and we've got the green back there. Now the skin just needs a little bit of an increase, the green a tiny little bit as well, and then we're done. We can probably do this in curves on a single node. So I'm going to go to hue versus saturation, and I'm going to bring our red orange up. Got that nice golden skin tone, and I just want to, let's come back out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a still here so we have something to compare it to. Okay, our skin here might be a touch red in comparison to the other shot, so what we'll also do is go into hue versus hue, and we'll just drag it down ever so slightly. I mean hue maybe like -1, it's a very slight difference. Cool. Okay, I think that's a good match. The greens, looking at them, I might just shift the greens ever so slightly more towards blue. I think in saturation they're pretty close, but I will bring that up anyway. We want to keep the blues safe here because we do see that blue shoulder later on. Cool. That's looking pretty good. The shot's getting a little bit soft, and maybe some of the shadows, especially under her chin on the skin, are a little bit saturated. So what we will do is we'll go into Lum V Sat on a new node, and we're just going to bring that back under control a little bit. So here we have that kind of glowing under the chin, and there we can bring that down. So we're just going to fix that, and now if we compare, that's a pretty solid match between the two. So last thing, these lips are a little bit crazy. We'll just do a very simple key. On the lips, and we will just bring them down ever so slightly so that they don't go nuts. Okay, and now a final primary cleanup on this shot. This specular highlight on the gum is clipping. We're just going to bring that back under control. There we go. And maybe just a little bit more contrast. And actually, no, that's fine. So now if we watch these three shots through, that's all looking pretty good. I might bring the mids up here slightly. Okay, for first pass, I'm pretty happy with that. And we're beginning to build quite a nice coherent sequence here. So here we can try our luck. We can just middle click and see if it copies across, and it does pretty well. We need to keep in mind that we made our skin tones a bit more yellow here. So Now he is looking a little bit too yellow by himself here, so what we'll do, we'll tweak that look. And we'll get nice rich skin tones, but just getting rid of that kind of yellow tint that was there before, so that's fine. Our greens are looking a little bit on the yellow side. What we'll do is we'll just bring them over a little bit more blue. They're looking a little bit vivid, so we can bring them down as well. There we go. Now we've got the secondary from the lips we've inherited here, and it's hitting his ears and it's hitting his jumper. I'm actually okay with the effect that's having here, but I'm going to refine it a bit. And that's just going to take care of glowing bits of the ear, bits of the shirt, and bits of his nose, which would otherwise start to glow in the light. So maybe just around his nostrils, there's some shadows there which are a little bit too saturated. And then we take care of that. So that's looking good. I think in the primary cleanup there, we need to bring our mids down a bit, because he's a little bit brighter than the other shot. And that's now looking pretty solid to me. This is a really good candidate for face vignettes, but we'll go over that when we come to it. So what we'll then do is I'm going to take a still of this, because I think that's a good reference for later on. And then with a lot of these, okay, that one's going to need its own thing because it's a bit warmer. And so is that. These shots, however, should be a fairly good match. It's obviously a bit too bright right now, so what we can do is we can bring that down. We've got some red kind of bokeh'd out leaves back here. We just want everything to stay under control, so what we will then do, cool, okay, I think we need a little bit of extra work on the skin here. It's looking a little bit pasty. So, and we need to watch out for those awkward terracotta coloured leaves in the background. We'll clean the white. Be careful with clean black because it starts to eat into the highlights on the head here. I'll blow that out. What we want to do is possibly bring this down a little bit, and he's still a little bit orange. So we just want to have a look at introducing a little bit more red and maybe grounding the shadows a bit more. Now, we've done some brightness changes within that key, so I want to check it through. Yeah, see, we're getting some chatter in the background. So, okay, so we probably can't change the brightness within the key. We'll give it a good healthy amount of blur as well. Okay, so we probably can't do any brightness tweaks within that secondary on this footage, so what we're going to have to do is make a primary node afterwards and try and get everything in place there. We just need to bring it down a little bit. And then compare that with the other shot. Now those greens are looking a little bit yellow, so we'll just go back to our UV hue and we will... There we go. That's looking good. Still, the skin looks a little bit bright to me. And I might just clean up the shadows and actually the highlights in this one. And that's now a pretty good match between the two. So I'm okay with that. Then we can move on. This is a good shot. I think this one will inherit that grade pretty well, and it does. A little bit bright. A little bit colourful, and we definitely need to do another pass at that baseball cap. And all we need to do is bring its saturation down. Okay, let's just take care of that part of the key we're missing. There we go. So we just want to bring it down. And we're going to want to bring our gain down a bit. I'll tell you what we can do actually. We'll bring it down until we're reasonably happy. We're going to go into our RGB curves, and using just the red channel, we're going to bring the top part of our red waveform down and back under control. And that's going to then prevent us from getting our red clip, when you can see the effect that has in the very top left up there, or the very top center right actually. And there we go, we've got our control back over our clipping red channel. Now this is another prime example of vignetting, or a shot that will take vignetting very well. We'll come back to that. The green still looks a little bit yellow, so we'll just shift that a little bit further towards blue. That's a bit cyan, that's a bit too much. That's more like it. And we might just bring our shadows down a touch. There we go, that's cool. Obviously we're going to track the face, we're going to track the eyes, we're going to do a kind of a beauty pass, I guess, later on. This shot looks familiar, and if we do that, it's pretty good. Between the two, that's rather good. We're getting a few clippy highlights here. So in our final node, we're going to bring things down, just so it matches with what we've got over here, and that's fine. And we're going to bring our shadows down a smidge as well. That's more or less ideal. And then what we will do finally is remove our little rose matte there, which is okay. That red shirt is okay, doesn't need anything else. It's not clipping, it's not illegal, that's fine, and it looks great. Everything else here is okay. Bit of face vignetting to go, general vignetting. Maybe I will push a bit more into this foliage. Let's just see what we're getting in the key there. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe bring the greens down in here a smidge, just so that they don't quite clash. There we go. Cool, so this is beginning to take shape. I hope we can see the direction we're going to take it. So we'll just continue. Got quite a few more shots to do. That's a good start, but needs a bit more, so we'll come back to that later. This is a good one to work on. This is a very simple shot. It's going to be 2 or 3 nodes probably to get into working order. This shot was slightly overexposed with these highlights up here. However, we can keep them under control, and that's okay. And I would go so far as to say that's probably alright. Might just cool it down ever so slightly. Actually, no, I don't think so. There's a slight redness, yellowness to the tarmac. And there's a slight magenta, but now that's fine. I would actually say that that's completely okay. It doesn't really need much more doing to it. Maybe a little bit of a vignette. Maybe we can just bring up the skin tone a bit more. Just want to be careful about getting the shirt in here. And just be careful about showing up that highlight on the right side of the face as well. And we'll just push a bit of extra colour into there. And it's slight, but it's there. Maybe a little bit closer towards red. There we go. Cool, and we will save. Been working for about half an hour now. We're going to save every half hour so we don't lose too much work. I will of course forget to do that later on when I get into the heat of things, but we need to at least mention best practice. Cool, so this is beginning to take quite nice shape, so we just keep pushing on, basically. We're not going to do anything that's drastically different throughout the rest of this video. So if you want to follow along, by all means do. Otherwise, you can pretty much see where this is going. I'm going to be a bit more quiet for the rest of this video as I just get along with it, as I just, well, basically get on with it and continue this grade. And should something require special attention, we will of course go over that then, but going through the outdoor sequence is pretty basic. We're just going to keep going through there, and going through the indoor sequence, we'll do a separate video on that, and then we'll go through our second pass and final pass. But yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and get working now. I'm not going to be as narratey as I was before because there's not much else to say. So sit along and enjoy, or better yet, scrub through the timeline and see how things are going at different points and see how it can help you in your own grade.